Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to those Muckrakers. I'm Pete.
And I'm Pat.
And what episode number is this?
29, I think?
Episode 29. Yeah, our last episode I really enjoyed Wait, or was it 2 episodes ago, the fall of Paul Manafort?
It was 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, man, things are moving quickly. Yeah, I imagined him to be kind of like a really ugly, dumb Max Payne, Do you remember that old movie where he's just like...
just walking around narrating his life?
Yeah, they took my family, and then I laundered a bunch of Russian money. And now everything can change in a New York minute when you buy a really expensive ostrich skin jacket.
It's getting to where a man can't even wear the body of giant dead birds anymore without the feds coming down on him. This is my favorite ostrich jacket.
So here's this little sidebar before we really dig in for today. I've been spending my week. I've been at a class at the Museum of Natural History, and what's cool about it is their planetarium has the most advanced to date projection system in the world.
Really?
Yeah. So basically it's
we're getting close to like Star Trek VR rooms or whatever that thing is called, the holodeck.
Yeah, well it's on the way. I mean, it's not hard light and they're not holograms yet, but instead of a flat screen, it's kind of like you sit in a chair like a regular theater, but the whole ceiling above you, the dome, is the screen.
Right.
Which is pretty cool in itself. And they basically, today we had this guy who was like the Bob Ross of astrophysics, and he's just like, and now
I can or I can't have sex with the dome once it gets going.
I mean, I guess that depends on how much you donate to the Museum of Natural History.
I mean, if it's anything like the holodeck, then I'd donate quite a bit.
But you're leading up to my point. So this guy is, and it's amazing. So he's like the Bob Ross of interplanetary. You're basically seeing these high resolution images of the moon. Kind of like if you've ever done any world creation inside a video game. We're just zooming in on landscapes, and we're seeing the Earth and the moon in 1 day delayed time. And it's massive, and it's really, really interesting. And I'm watching it, and we get out of there. I just look at another guy, and I go, "Rich people are stupid." And he goes, "Why?" I go, "Because they buy 5 Lamborghinis. I would just buy this place and play video games in it."
Yeah.
Can you imagine playing video games in the most advanced projection dome in the world? Why would you buy an ostrich skin jacket when you can do that?
I mean, if I had the money for it, I'd be playing VR games all the time.
Well, this isn't even VR. This is just a super awesome, high-res, complete top of a dome resolution screen. You know what I mean?
So 4K.
Yeah, it's amazing. Or
but on the
why don't rich people do what you would have done, which is just go in there and watch porno?
Well, I mean, I want to have sex with solid holograms from the holodeck in Star Trek. My goals are lofty.
Yeah,
right?
I think it would be a less lofty goal to just get a girlfriend. I think at this point it's just go out and, put your penis in a real woman.
Speaking of putting your penis in a real woman, by which I mean speaking of alternatives to that, did you know that the government is right now cock-blocking us on sex robots by denying grants to people who are in the scientific community?
So again, this ties into my science corner, and that's kind of a stretch. The government's not actually blocking sex robots just through your 7 layers of Kevin Bacon, 7 layers of separation. You're
6 degrees of Kevin
You're
Bacon.
The transitive property of algebra means that the government is denying my right to have a sex robot.
Well, what people listening don't understand is that it's very late for me, and when it's late, I get rambly. So
they were going to say
6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is my default setting at this point.
When it gets late, you turn into Alex Jones.
I turn into fucking sex robot gay.
Can a robot be gay? Is that possible?
I mean, with the right settings. If I'm paying for it, it's going to be whatever I want it to be.
I think that's going to be the name of my new science fiction novel. Because they have do androids dream
if I'm paying for it, it's whatever I want it to be.
No. They have what do you call it? Do androids dream of electric sheep? Mine's just going to be called Do androids
dream of my penis?
Are androids gay?
Depends if I pay for it.
But can androids be gay? They can't, right?
Why not?
Because you're
Well,
assigning human.
it depends on how you identify gender, right? Like, can boats be gay? Well, we call boats she, so if two boats wanted to mate, it would necessarily be
But boats don't even have
lesbian
genitalia.
boat
That's what I'm
sex,
saying.
right?
So you're basically putting a human construct on an inanimate object, or in the case
Right.
of this, an animate object.
Well, it comes down to how you identify the reality around yourself.
Can
Like,
you have?
because we speak English, it's bizarre for us to identify inanimate objects with genders, but in Spanish they do it for everything. Everything has an assigned gender based on
Right, but I don't.
law.
But I don't think that answers the question. Can a robot be gay?
Well, first we have to determine if it has a gender at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's the same way that like when they were remember a while ago when they were freaking out and they were like, "What can we freak out on?" They're like, "The Teletubbies are turning the kids gay." I'm like, I don't think the Teletubbies A have a gender or B
They don't.
a sex or C sexually reproduce in any way. So
I don't believe they have a language, do they? They just make noises.
yeah. So here's the thing: if you're projecting your weird sexual hangups on a completely like non-sex being, that's your fault, man.
I was also 6 degrees of Kevin Baconing that last thing I was talking about, because we were also going to talk about perceptions of reality based on language.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah.
But I don't know if we're still going to cover that today on top of everything else.
We might. So start us with what's going on in the world. I mean, there's a lot, and I don't know how I feel about this previous thing, but hit us with the big story. What's happening right now?
The biggest story for this week would probably be Omarosa, if you want to get to that.
Yeah, let's get into Omarosa because I don't know a ton about her, but I do know that I think that like, and this is the problem is like, I feel kind of like her thing is a distraction, although maybe it's not, but it's also a pretty big deal that somebody just was able to do a whole bunch of recordings inside the secure White House.
Yeah, so we lightly touched up on this last week. Omarosa is someone who is in the first and like ninth, I think, season of The Apprentice. The
Yeah.
first one, and then like an All-Stars season where they had a bunch of people come back. And so her only real claim to fame is being a celebrity or a reality show TV
Yeah.
person. The same as our president, right? That's all he was, and then he became president. So
Yeah,
why not
well,
staff?
Here's
Why
my,
not staff the White House with just people he knows? But the thing is that he's surrounding himself with hucksters like himself, con
Yeah.
artists, which is what she is. She is a serial liar, just like everyone else Trump hires.
But
and
here's the thing: just because
so,
that doesn't mean that like that like we can discredit her. That, like there's a lot of
well,
witnesses.
here's the thing. Right? Yeah, she does have people that corroborate what she says in a lot of these things.
So
but
like
also, and most importantly, she has tapes.
Right.
She wired herself with. Actually, she did a really good job wiring herself because as a journalist myself, I have to record interviews all the time, and the quality of those interviews, even whenever I'm very careful and meticulous with some decently expensive equipment to not catch background noise, it can still just end up as snowy, garbled garbage if almost anything happens to throw off the sound. When Omarosa was recording these conversations, secretly recording these conversations, there was no fuzz, nothing was interrupted. People have recorded Trump with professional cameras, and he's just like turned and talked into a fan, so they couldn't catch half of what he was saying. Omarosa managed to get him clear as day, crystal clear.
So the big thing is, they're like, oh, Trump definitely said the N-word.
So we don't have to take Omarosa's word for it whenever she says this stuff because she has audio
So
logs.
I'm less interested in his racial slurs, which are horrible. But at this point, he
Here's the
supports
thing.
Nazis. So it's like, do you really think that people are going to I mean, before he got elected, he talked about sexually assaulting women.
Like, at this point, if he says the N-word, the people that still support him would only like him more.
Yeah.
That would not discourage them from liking him.
Yeah, there's that whole like, man, you said it, and I was thinking it, and you said it, buddy. Mm-hmm. Like that whole.
He's not only said the N-word, but he's also said worse, and this is backed up by other people who are on the Celebrity Apprentice now.
My favorite.
That actually made me happy this week, though, that Penn Jillette was in the news.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
I love Penn Jillette, because
full disclosure, Pete and I are both huge fans of Penn Jillette,
because
from the show Bullshit to Penn's Point to Penn Sunday School, the podcast.
Because I feel like he's a very real human being. He's very aware of his faults, and so his whole statement was like, he's like, I've heard him say this stuff. He goes, but here's the thing. He goes, I'm a storyteller. I mean, I was in the room when he said it, so I can corroborate what she said. But he goes, I'm not going to go into it. It's on tape. He's like, I'm a storyteller. So And basically, like
Or he said that I'm an unreliable narrator because he doesn't have perfect memory, and he's aware that he doesn't have perfect memory
yes, yes,
because he actually keeps a journal of his day-to-day life every day. He writes down what he's doing in his journal, and he will insist that something is true later on, and then go back and check his journal to prove it and be like, oh, I'm wrong. Actually, I wrote right here that you were right.
yep.
So he's aware that he misremembers
Yes,
things.
and that's why I think he's an amazing person. But also,
And he's saying that right now it's way too important that we get all the details right,
right,
because we're probably
right.
about to try and remove a sitting
Yes,
president.
yes, and he
And
doesn't
we've
want
never tried to force a president to move before. He doesn't want to be involved in the story in such a way that his story becomes part of that process,
or that
and then it comes out that he's slightly wrong about it
right,
later.
or that he damages it in any way. I think that's very noble, you know.
So he's saying, look, the tape exists. I was in the room
Yeah.
when they were recording it, so I know it exists. No matter what the CEO says, the head of whatever that channel is, ABC, NBC.
Yeah,
I don't
and then
remember.
there's a bunch of other stuff that I think we've known, and I swear I read it before, but they were talking about like, where for one season of The Apprentice, Trump was like, you know what? Why don't we do a season where like it's black people versus white people, very strong, very young, beautiful black people, very young, very strong, beautiful white people. They'll eat it up. The ratings will be through the roof. And the network was like, fuck no. That we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna do a this week on The Apprentice, the eugenics episode. Like
he very absent-mindedly just says racist shit all the time.
yeah,
Like that's
he's kind of like a, you know, we all have a Jekyll and Hyde in our own heads, right? I call it I think Lincoln had a term, the angels of our better nature, you know.
Yeah.
So it's always a constant fight. But like even being from the South, like there have been really horrible especially when I first moved up to New York and visited LA. I had these two incidents where like the not better angels of my nature kind of like popped up with some stuff that almost made it to my mouth before I could filter and examine and go, what the fuck? Once I was at a comedy theater, standing, like it was packed out, there were no seats left in Los Angeles, and this black gentleman was like, excuse me, sir, he's like, this is going to be weird, but do you mind like switching seats with my wife so her and I can sit together? And I said, sure, just point her out to me because I don't want to do the old like, hey, can you give up your seat for my wife so that you can stand in the back during the comedy show and see nothing? I want to make sure the old like, anyway, so he points his wife out and she's it's a comparable seat. It's just across the theater, you know? And he pointed her out, and at first I couldn't see her because all I saw was white women.
Ah.
And I almost said, I don't see her. All I see is white women.
Ooh, yeah. See, that would be a snafu that because you grew up in the South, you could make it and people could probably forgive you.
Well, the point is,
at
like,
least be slightly understanding. Yeah, but that is a racist faux pas that you had.
That's not my fault that's in my head. That's from, like, growing up in South Georgia where people would, behind closed doors, be like, "'Tain't right. You shouldn't be mixing." I don't care. I see absolutely nothing wrong with like interracial marriage. It's like, but it was just weird that popped into my head. Second time when I moved to New York, I was on the subway on the way home, and like these two dudes were like just furiously making out, and my brain went, "Oh, he must be drunk, and he thinks his buddy is his girlfriend. You should go tell him." Like my brain
like that's
was
just a mistake that they're making.
yeah, my brain was just like, clearly two dudes can't make out. He must have mistakenly think that his friend is his wife. Like,
excuse me, sir, you seem to have tripped and your tongue fell into that other gentleman's mouth. Let me remove that for you, sir.
I don't know if you've ever had to like pull your own brain aside and go, listen here, you fucking act right in public and shut the fuck up. What is wrong with you today?
That reminds me of the old Critic episodes when he would be like fighting with his stomach, or his stomach would be fighting with him. It's like, silence, you fool! If you make nice, then all the cake can be ours.
Yeah, like, but it was
Something
weird.
like
But like, I recognize those thoughts are just kind of like, like a vestigial organ. Well, I not even a vestigial organ because at least those were once useful. But it's like leftover stuff from like shitty people during my formative years. Like, I don't hold those views, but they're in my head. But he holds those views and just says them.
Yeah, the president does hold those views because his world is painted by being really, really wicked, not smart. Yeah.
So Omarosa says, and says she says out the 200 recordings. She says she's talked to the FBI. my fear with her is I wonder how much of this is going to help and how much of this is going to muddy the waters.
Well, I mean, there's really a lot to unpack here because it's really gotten me thinking, though. Who the hell still works for Trump at this point?
Well, how is your security so bad that people are just getting really good recordings of everything that goes on? You know what I mean?
Because he's been working with a skeleton crew this entire time. He didn't hire, like, even, what is it, 10% of all the roles that needed to be hired? Like, people who are supposed to be in charge of major functions of the government just don't exist still to this day. And, I mean, General Kelly's trying to hold down the fort, but even he's largely given up. There's just basically at this point, all there is a hell of a lot of smash and grab going on with con men trying to out-con each other before the hammer falls. It's like the hot potato game you were talking about earlier, except the last person standing with the potato goes to prison.
You know the old game we used to play as kids? Hot prison potato. We threw a potato around, and the last one to hold it goes to jail. Yeah.
What's funny, though, is that according to some inside sources, the majority of Trump's employees and government officials are just stuck with their current jobs because nobody else will ever hire them. Trump's name is just too much of a scarlet letter on their resume.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think these people...
There's just going to be a whole lot of crooks unemployed when Mueller saves America.
So, like, you know, like Spicy was on, I can't remember which country it was. He was on some news program, and they just went after him. And I think that Spicy, old Sean Spicer, I think he was like, oh, I was just a fun thing, right? I was on SNL. No, dude, people hated you just like they hated Hitler's propaganda guy. You should not have gotten involved. Your career is over, and, you know, history in the future will judge you like...
harshly.
Yeah, hopefully it will judge you as a Nazi fucking collaborator.
Yeah, and even take Kellyanne Conway, for instance. She barely shows up in the public now. Even though she's still employed by him, you just don't see her anymore because she's so toxic that even the people that let her be that toxic doesn't really want to touch her. I mean, we can sit around and say that nothing the Trump administration says or does matters, right? Because they're still allowed to just keep doing it. They just keep hurting people in innovative ways every day.
Everything matters.
It feels like that. It feels like nothing matters. But...
Oh, are you going to finish that, or are you just going to say but?
Well, I mean, I'm skimming my notes to find out where I get to the point. God, I get really rambly in these things.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's simply not the case for anyone except for Trump himself.
Yeah.
Kellyanne Conway is the coiner of the term alternative facts.
Yeah.
She owns that now and will, for the rest of her life, be unable to shake it. She really messed up the day that she said that, since even Trump rarely finds use for her for anything. So once Trump's in prison, no one's going to touch her again. The one silver lining of this whole abominable administration is that everything Trump touches dies. Careers more than anything else.
Yeah, we talked about the Trump effect only benefits him. I just read an article by a guy who's releasing a book that I really want to get, and I can't remember the name of it. But he basically ties Trump back to the he ties Trump back to the Russian mob and says that the Russian mob operates as an arm of the Russian government, and that Trump is a fully owned Russian asset. And has been for a long time because of all the money that he has laundered for the Russian mafia. And here's the weird thing about it. So the reason that, like, not more of this has come to light, and this is what's interesting, and this actually really fucked the world in a lot of ways that we are just now figuring out. We were very, very, very deep into, like, investigating the Russian mob and, like, their dealings and stuff with, like, Trump and in the United States and money laundering, right?
Right.
Then 9/11 happened, and we pulled every single resource from everything else and put it into fighting the war on terror because the terrorists hate our freedom.
Because I'm the decider, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bush is coming out these days, and part of me is sort of happy for him that he's lived long enough to see someone that almost makes him look good, but at the same time,
it's his
people
fault.
are not going to forget about this. And also, yes, it turns out it seems partially his fault that we even have Trump, because he made such a terrible decision with Dick Cheney, Dick Cheney's basically an intelligent Trump, right? Like, people keep saying, imagine what this administration could have gotten away with if they were smart. Yeah, Ronald Reagan status. Trump would be Ronald Reagan now.
Yeah.
He'd be the second coming of Jesus because he's given the Republicans everything they ever wanted, and he doesn't care how furious it makes the other side. He just rubber stamps anything big
I
businesses
you know what I wish
tell
for
him to, so that means they're willing to pay tons of money worth of propaganda to make sure that what's happening looks good to people.
the problem with George W. Bush is he has the same kind of factor that like Michael Scott from The Office has when you're like, this person's an idiot and he's ruining lives. But there's something likable in his dumb naivety, you know?
Yes.
And you're like, oh, I hate him, but he's just kind of like a kid, like, hey, oh man, look at this. So honestly, that what I want for him is I want him to end up like that guy ended up in the end of was it James Bond? Was it which was it Quantum of Solace where the dude ended up in the desert with nothing to drink but oil?
I don't know Bond outside of like Golden Eye.
It was
and
one
some
of
the
those
earlier
James
movies.
Bond movies where in the end he like took the villain and dropped him in the desert and just left him with like oil and he's like, drink this since you know this is what you did to other people and just left him. That's what I want for George W. Bush. I want him to be left in like the Iraqi desert with just a canteen full of oil.
And then out there on Skyhook, he'll be like, "Is it for England, James?" And he'll be like, "No, it's for myself." And then he pushes him off.
Then he can also have Cheney. We'll put Cheney out there too.
Happy
The thing is, I don't
rubber,
think
rubber.
you can kill Cheney. I really think, whenever I think of Cheney, I always go back to that old Star Wars saying where he's like, a twisted mess, more machine than man by now, you know?
That's how I describe my teeth.
Cheney teeth.
They're more machine now than man.
Yeah, so,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's already operating on like a robot gorilla heart, so don't think too much else is going to be able to get to him.
So 9/11 fucked us on a lot of stuff. 9/11 shaped the world in many ways, and it fucked our intelligence services. And here's the scary thing. You ready for me to get to Pete's? I'm gonna change it now to Pete's Angry Science Corner
Pete, you're going to change the name of it now to Pete's Angry Science Corner?
instead of Pete's Science Corner
Okay.
For
I
this-
repeated what you said because you were like cutting out on my side for some reason.
for this segment. You ready for this, or we got more Omarosa to do?
I mean, we can talk about a chilling day in history, but we're good on Omarosa.
All right. So here's the thing, and here's what's making me mad right now about science. So right now, the U.S. Department of the Interior, which is responsible for releasing a ton of money to different scientific endeavors inside the United States to study the effects of climate change, are being held up. You want to know why the scientists aren't getting their money?
Why aren't the scientists getting their money?
Because they have to wait for their grant proposals to be put under political review.
But what? But my sex robots, they need to have their money so that they can become the next, Einsteins, and then they can make my sex robots.
Well, we have to make sure that your sex robots are not partisan sex robots. You know what I mean? Like, what if your sex robots become self-aware and decide to only service democratic socialists?
What if they become self-aware and decide that human rights should be a right that all humans get to enjoy and not just the top 1%?
Then I'm seeing a
That
new
would be
war.
a
Then I'm seeing a new
catastrophe.
war against the robots. That's ultimately what's going to happen. We're going to go to war with the robots. They're going to be like, "What happened? Were you guys fighting for your freedom?" You're like, "No, they wanted to give us health care and an income, and free education."
A living wage so that a mother that works 80 hours a week can feed her children.
I will
and send them
die.
to college.
I will die for your right to have to raise those children you couldn't get aborted, and you having to work 90 hours a week to not afford anything. I'll die for that. So basically, it says they're screening the political dollars to better align with the administration's priorities, right?
Basically, they're using politics to fuck over the scientific community
And what
by
makes-
making sure that people can't get those grants that a lot of people needed to survive. Like, that's how the scientific community works, is that they get grants so that they can do their research.
Yeah. So Secretary Ryan Zinke's priority range from actively supporting efforts to secure our southern border. Why is science involved in securing our border? To ensuring American energy is available to meet our security and economic needs. All right. So here's the thing: American energy will not be because you're trying to kill solar, you moron. And my favorite, he's trying to make sure that the balance is toward providing greater public access to public lands over restrictions to access. You know what that means? I think basically he wants to make sure that there is greater access for oil companies to get onto public lands and drill for fucking oil and frack. I think that's what it means.
Most likely, yes. But I think I figured something out, Pete.
What's
It
that?
just reminds me of this one episode of Clerks whenever they're going through all of Leonardo's notes, and they're like, well, what are you going to do after you get rid of all the chickens? And Randall's like, Stage 42, robot chickens. Well, you're saying, what does science have to do with protecting our border? Well, Pete, they're trying to get rid of all the Mexicans, right? So what are they going to do once they get rid of all the Mexicans?
Robot Mexicans.
Exactly. Speaking of, I actually have a fun fact for everyone.
Well, let me throw one more thing at you real quick. So here's what made me even matter. So the guy that's in charge of this is actually a friend of Ryan, Secretary Ryan Zinke, an old football.
It's nepotism all the way down.
But it makes me mad because he's an old football buddy of this guy, and the guy has a fucking bachelor's in like business administration. I'm more qualified to run the fucking Office of the Interior than these fucking morons. It's one thing when you're like, oh fuck, they're evil geniuses.
I have an MBA and I'm probably a better athlete than him today.
It's just frustrating when you just go, God damn it, they're not even evil geniuses, they're evil morons. Why can't I have the job? Dude, let me be in charge of the fucking Office of the Interior.
It's just con man hot potato, Pete. If
Pretty
you get
much.
in there, you would have your chance to catch the potato and toss it to the next person.
Yeah, well, the way that my luck runs, I would walk in first day, immediately get tossed the potato, and then be on trial next to Manafort for money laundering.
It's like, oh no, I knew there'd be a little bit of money laundering, but this is.
They'll be like, here's your office, here's your trunk full of expensive exotic jackets. Here's your unmarked bills. I'm like, wait, what? Do I need all this to be the Secretary of the Interior? And then all of a sudden they're slapping cuffs on me, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Oh, that reminds me. What's her name? Sarah Trump? It's some Sarah, something like that. Anyway, Eric Trump's wife might be going to prison now, too.
Yes! I'm sorry, I'm just like...
I'm sorry, this is something from the Omarosa tapes I forgot to mention earlier.
Why is she going to jail?
Most recent tape has her trying to bribe Omarosa into silence after Omarosa was fired by Kelly.
Is that illegal?
Yeah, yeah.
I like that Trump keeps trying to say that she violated a non-disclosure agreement, and it's like, dude, you can't make people sign NDAs when you're the fucking president. Like, that's all public record.
Because right, they work for America, not for you. You cannot make them sign NDAs. It's illegal to even try. But fucking Trump breaks the law left, right, and center.
Well, apparently he even
accountable for any.
Not only are the NDAs worthless, but apparently they don't even hold up anyway because they worded them wrong or whatever. So they don't matter anyway. Like, it's like double jeopardy. Like,
yeah, all their legal documents are full of typos and shit. It's like they're kindergartners out there. They have no idea what they're doing, yet they get to run America into the ground.
That's fine, because my plan is to
Stage 42.
Stage 42.
Robot Mexicans.
I was gonna say robot America. No, my plan honestly is I think if I ever go back, because I'm almost finished with this master's degree, I think my plan is if I ever go back to school, I'm gonna go to school in Europe. I'm gonna go to like Germany or Denmark and get my PhD for free.
Speaking of Denmark, did you hear about them releasing a video to
I watched
counter...
the video because there was some Fox News hag that's just like socialism, and the guy from Denmark was like, actually, it works out pretty well here. We're the highest educated. We're actually, our GDP is higher than the United States. We actually have a higher educated populace, and her stuff. Go ahead.
She was, because her points was just a series of lies, such as, over in Denmark, no one ever graduates because they get paid to go to college. Well, isn't that nice? And he's like, yes, madam, actually it is nice. But also, actually, we have a much higher graduation rate than America.
So there's
our grads get better jobs. They don't run cupcake. She also said they make cupcake factories if they do ever graduate, and a bunch of other weird stuff.
Yeah, so the problem is, and they have this, the weird thing they're selling.
Also, and not only do they have a lower unemployment rate than America, but their workers, the people that do get jobs, have significantly better pay.
Yeah.
Like $20 an hour minimum.
Well, the problem is, and the thing...
A living wage, right? What you need to actually get paid to survive today.
Well, the problem is the lies that they're peddling are that, like, they think that humans are... The only thing that motivates humans are, like, pain and poverty. Like, so Denmark pays their students to attend school, which is paid for through taxes. And her argument was like, well, then no one will ever graduate. And I go, look, I went to college. I paid for a lot of it. Even if it was free, do you think that I want to stay in college forever? Like, and I'm certain that the pay for going to school is not that great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
Plus,
just
I mean,
the
uh,
idea. The idea and the problem is, and people don't seem to understand about like you know subsidized, or I shouldn't even call it subsidized. I don't want to call it free higher education, but access to higher education for everybody. If everybody can go to school, without having to pay for it because our taxes fund it, we have a better population overall because everyone has access to education.
yeah.
Which leads me into my next point. So you know how people like to go, oh, and I've been listening to this a lot, like the universities, the liberal brainwashing, they're just brainwashing factories. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, it seems. I always thought that it seems interesting that people tend to be more Republican whenever they stay away from places where you can get information, like the newspapers, the news in general, education. Why is it that anytime you have access to information, Pete, you tend to
Well,
turn liberal?
this is fascinating, and I wanted to pull up some. I couldn't find the studies in time for the podcast because we were experiencing technical difficulties. But what's
I
fascinating?
had Garmin drilled a lot of this into my head. If you want me to take it, but you can.
Yeah, let me hit the main point, and then the idea is that experts and novices see the world in different ways. And why that is because as you learn, you gain greater language and understanding, right? And as we
Right.
know as humans, we became humans when we invented language because language dictates reality, right?
Yes.
Um,
There's an interesting study on that, actually. There was this one girl who was kept like an animal by her parents in the basement, and she was never taught a language, and she was kept there till she was like 12 or 13 before she was found in the basement and rescued. And at that point, they were able to eventually turn her from a feral child into a functioning member of society, and they taught her English, and once they were able to communicate with her, once she knew how to talk and they were able to ask her about her past, you know how much of it she remembered?
I'm gonna assume very little because she
Ab-
had no language.
Absolutely nothing. Not one bit of living in that basement did she still recall. All she remembered was learning how to speak. Things that happened after that point. She had no concept of existing before then.
Right, because you can't exist if you don't have an idea of language. Like, yeah, that's why language is so important. So when you learn new language for stuff, it changes your whole way of seeing things. So they call it liberal
And
brainwashing, but what it actually is
it goes so much deeper than that
yeah,
too. Like you can't see colors if you don't have a word for
yeah.
color.
So there are these other societies they found that see as clear as black and white to us, and they'll see like shades of green that's a lot of us can't see because they have words for it. Like that dumb old
Right.
thing where they're like, the Inuit Indians have 36 words for snow, but they've only got one word for love. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there are societies where like, oh man, they have 36 different types of green.
Yeah. So but they look back through ancient literature and they find that certain colors just don't exist before certain dates, and they're able, certain descriptions of the battlefield. They'll find that people describe the oceans as being clear, the sky as being clear because they didn't have a word for blue yet.
Right.
Like the very first color that seems to be named in all of human history is red, and then we move on to green, and then blue is one of the later
Yeah.
ones. And orange did not exist at all until very close to the modern age, and so on.
So if I ran through ancient history in a time machine, that was shaped like a giant orange, they would not be able to see it.
It would look red to them.
Oh, they'd be like, he's in a giant red time machine, and I'm like, it's orange, you fucking primitive fox.
That's sort of like if you're wearing a purple jacket today and someone's like, actually, that's fuchsia. You're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've never learned the word for it, you literally, your brain does not process it.
That's
As a
real
word for
weird.
it.
So when I was in kindergarten, I remember there was this girl that every time we looked at something orange, she'd be like, "That's red," and I wonder if it's because she didn't know the fucking word for orange, so she couldn't see it,
Possibly, or she could be colorblind.
or she could be stupid. Okay, you're gonna go the medical explanation. I'm like, or she's just dumb. She's just dumb. She's real dumb. She just calls things wrong because she's dumb. Yeah, so the idea is like you go to college, you learn new things, your reality expands and changes. You can see things. So I have a lisp. You can see things that you couldn't see before, and they did this cool experiment with us in the class I was just taking. After we did like a week of astrophysics and a week of geological research and field work and stuff. We went to the Museum of like North American Animals, and we looked at like the dioramas, and we had to sketch and then describe what we saw. And what was amazing was the amount of like geological information that we were describing as we were talking about it, which we would not have been able to see 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We're all like, we're just real nerdy. We're like, wow, clearly, if you look right here, you can see the rock there. There are clear glacial striations on the rock. You can tell right here, so some metamorphic process had to take place after the sedimentary, like, and this is all stuff that,
Actually, that's phosphorus sulfite you'll see here. If you look closely,
yeah,
you'll
and this is
tell
stuff we would not have known. So, yes, in your mind, it's liberal brainwashing, but what it actually is education expands your consciousness, and that's a great thing about it is once it happens, you can't go back.
But also, it's keep in mind that this expansion of reality is not binary. Things aren't either or, because then at this point we get into one of the more fascinating aspects of this expansion of reality, and that's that reality doesn't expand, but it's also relative to the eye of the beholder.
Right.
So there are certain things that you can expand for everyone. Like everyone in the class can now understand this volcano or these different sediments differently, or to some greater level than they could before. But everyone's also learning it differently. Is what I was trying to say. Because language is symbolic to people, and that's the next great step to understanding reality, is understanding that everyone's reality is based on their own personal paradigms. And so once you start looking at paradigms, the two biggest different paradigms, I should say, that exist. One is the discovery paradigm, which is the basic belief that things are binary, the basic belief that there is one reality and it can be understood and observed equally by everyone. Or the other paradigm is, I forgot the name of the good one, but the critical one, the critical paradigm is the name of another similar one. I'll just go with that for now because I can't remember the term for the other one. The critical paradigm says that there are multiple realities based on the observers because everyone's experiences are so drastically different that what is one thing to one person could be something totally different to another person. And at its most basic, it means that if I see a dog, I could say, oh, that's a dog, that's cool. And someone else will see a dog, they'd be like, oh, that's a dog, that's scary. Right? Because I could have positive experiences with the animal.
It's the same way. It's the same way that Freud.
So anytime someone ever mentions dog, it would mean something very different to both me and the other person.
It's the same way that Sigmund Freud talks about grief and how people, they say things that are so true to them during the grief process that it has a physiological effect on them. And his whole thing is, if they believe it to be true and it causes physical symptoms, then who's to say it is not true? At least to them, you know what I mean?
Though Freudian psychology, I should say, was like the bog standard until like about 1980, I want to say.
Yeah.
And that recently we finally began to move away from it and have much better psychology studies.
Yeah, Freud's got some interesting stuff. So one of the other things, and this is the scary part of Pete Science Corner I want to tell you about. This is what I don't like, and this is where things like this greatly worry me. The guy that's like the head of the Department of the Interior, Ryan Zinke, Winky, whatever his name is, Ryan Blinky. I don't care. I don't care about him. I don't want to know his name. I don't want him to exist in my reality.
I know the names of so many more politicians today than I've ever known before in my life. The Trump administration has me on edge.
He's one of those people that, like, man, if I could just pull a Thanos, but with like this dumb administration, and just snap my fingers and just
we don't do direct anything that can be considered a direct threat.
Okay, all right. Look, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the Infinity Gauntlet is neither a direct nor indirect threat towards anyone.
I mean, one of these days, whenever we're in Guantanamo Bay, they're definitely going to bring up the podcast as Exhibit B in our trial anyway.
Yeah, you know what?
We're not going to get a trial because it's Guantanamo.
Dude, Guantanamo is a whole other subject that makes me really angry, but we'll cover that one day. So, yeah, I'm not threatening him, but like I tell you what, you want to put me on trial for threatening somebody with the Infinity Gauntlet? Then bring me the Infinity Gauntlet. I'm going to have my lawyer be like, yeah, have this case thrown out unless they can bring me the Infinity Gauntlet with all the stones. Then we'll talk. But so the problem is, and the reason that they're screening science so hard is because they're working for the oil and gas lobby. and they don't
Yeah.
want any science to mention that humanity and the human effects on global climate change,
Oh.
because it hurts
Which
their bottom line. So the wild, I don't know if you know this right now, those of you who are listening to this in real time, California is on fire. The state.
it has been for years actually, but right now it's particularly
Yeah,
bad.
so in that observatory I went to, we could see the smoke from space.
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at planet Earth from the moon, and you could see the smoke. Ryan Sinke,
It's one of just two man-made objects we can see from space.
the other is my muscles. Look, if we're going to be part of an administration that lies, I'm going to use this podcast to lie about how fit I am.
And if anyone says differently, it's fake news,
Fake news,
folks.
people.
Okay.
Those pictures
The-
of my fat belly were doctored. I'm not really that fat, ladies.
The very, very fake news will have you believing otherwise. Don't listen to them, okay? Sad.
So Ryan,
Jobs.
Ryan Sinke, so they're, I guess the press is like, hey, California's on fire. You think it's climate change? And he's like, no, because I don't know what he actually sounds like. I just imagine he sounds like Jafar. He's like, no, it's on fire because of environmental terrorists. So here's what's bad about that. Our government has already established terrorists as the boogeyman that they can use to justify anything, right? Anyone could be a terrorist at any time. We don't know, but we have to keep taking away your rights, and we have to do this because of terrorism, right? So now if you're taking science
Yes.
and you're denying climate change, but also blaming the effects of climate change on environmental terrorists, that's incredibly dangerous because terrorism is people are scared of terrorism. It's already in it's already in the American psyche, the American consciousness. All you have
Terrorism's bad.
yeah,
Terrorists.
the terrorists are destroying the environment because they hate our freedom to drive cars and burn fossil fuels. Like, it's a very terrifying narrative, and it's blatantly untrue. The fucking wildfires were not set by terrorists; they're set because we're seeing global climate change at an accelerated rate. But it's another one of those things. It's just like, oh my God, if they can make this become the narrative, now they can arrest anybody that's like pro science for being an environmental terrorist.
And all of this is just to line the pockets of the fossil fuel companies, because that's basically what it is at the end of the day. People that sell oil have a shitload of money, and part of having a shitload of money means that you can spend a shitload of money to
Yeah.
line people's pockets to make sure that they keep letting you make more
So-
money forever. And they know that it would be right now it's more profitable to do that than to just stop selling oil and switch over all operations to solar, which is what they're going to do eventually. They know eventually solar's going to win, and then they'll just swap
Solar's
gears.
already
What they
winning.
don't
Yeah,
realize-
solar's coming online. Solar and wind are coming online far faster.
What they don't
than coal.
realize is, but what they don't realize is that there is a critical tipping point that once Earth hits it, there's no going back, and then we all
let
fry.
me tell you
and
something
this
about that.
president's not helping.
Let me tell you something about that critical tipping point, my friend.
Go ahead.
Best our fossil records can tell us, when the CO2 in the atmosphere was at 400 parts per million, and if you don't know what that is, that's a measurement of just like in a certain amount of air, how much of that is CO2. So right now in our atmosphere, we've hit about 400 parts per million, which is a really high amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. So the last time there was that much CO2 in the atmosphere, the ocean was about 20 feet higher. Now that may not seem like much, but
That's a hell of a lot.
yeah, but in their estimates, they're thinking that we may see 1 to 2 feet of sea level rise in the next 100 years. But based on data, the last time there was this much CO2 in the air, way back, millions and millions of years ago, but a lot more of the Earth was underwater. And the reason is because as the Earth heats up, thermal expansion causes the oceans to expand, right?
Yeah.
So they showed us a map of what the sea level 20 feet higher looks like, and the place, the school I work at is gone, and most of where I live in New York and Brooklyn is gone. All of Manhattan, except for like a little narrow strip, is also underwater.
I wonder if that's also part of the of their long game, the Republicans' long game, is that they're trying to drown out all the liberal states of California and New York, and then they'll never have to worry about losing their seats again.
So then they only have to just like kind of work for the flyover states because all the coastal elites are drowned.
I was about to say the beachfront property states. You mean?
Yeah, well, here's the problem. We're not all gonna we're gonna move. Like, we're not just gonna stay here and die. It's not like the sea
Yeah.
level rises and we just stay in our houses and go, I guess this is it, fellas. But
We
yeah,
all move inland, and then they're
but that's
fucked because they'll never win an
but the thing
election
that well, they're
again.
also not realizing that like Florida will be gone too, so that's goodbye for most of
Ooh.
Florida. Yeah, just underwater, and it's catastrophic. Like, there's a whole lot of other things that go along with climate change, besides ocean sea level rise. That's just a really measurable one. But yeah, and we're not doing stuff about it, and it's fine. But at the same time, the rest of the
Well, we're
world,
we're trying. Like California had all these laws about what do you call it? Ways that other cars can produce just so much pollution.
right,
Or they were trying to limit that, and
right.
because there's so many buyers, it created a nationwide
Yeah,
shift in how
they,
cars are made and manufactured. But then our president decided, no, actually, I'm going to overturn states' rights because even though the Republicans are the party of states' rights, not when the Democrats want to do it, though. Okay,
yeah.
it's all about
So
slaves.
the point is, the rest of the world is moving forward. China's going to come online with the most amazing solar that we've seen. So I think
Yeah.
the rest of the world will continue to move forward because they
Which
understand.
people can laugh because China's air is despicable, but they're still leading the world and they're still
Yeah.
going to be
Well, here's
kicking
the
our
thing that
asses.
China has that a lot of other places don't, and this is when you want to change something in
No value
history.
for human life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's an old Louis C.K. joke when he goes, "You'll be amazed what you can accomplish when you just throw an unlimited amount of human suffering at it." And
Yep.
it's horrible, but like that's how we got cheap iPhones, and that's probably how we're going to get the
But
green energy revolution.
that's how we're firing up the left right now in this country.
It's just throw an
a shitload of
unimaginable
human suffering
amount of
out.
human suffering at it, and all of a sudden you've got people going, "Yeah, why don't I run for office? I should."
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the science corner. Now I want to take you to a thing called Pete's Ethics Corner.
Pete's what's Pete's ethic corner
So
about?
Pete's Ethics Corner is when
about?
I lay out an ethical dilemma, and then you go, "No, it's Nazis," and I go, "Yeah, you're right."
All right, let's hear it.
All right, so this is upsetting me. So the Grand Canyon is being sued by a creationist for religious discrimination. So the Park Services, this guy named Andrew Snelling, sued the Grand Canyon National Park after a years-long attempt to get a research permit to collect rocks in the park. He is trained as a geologist, and he is also a young Earth creationist, which I don't understand how you're a geologist and a young Earth creationist, because I feel like you can't be both of those. That doesn't make any sense. That confuses me the same way that, like, gender-neutral bathrooms confuse rednecks. I don't. What? I mean, you can't. How do you have a penis? How can a woman have a penis? I don't. How do two women have? Yeah, that's how I feel when I hear geologist and young Earth creationist.
I picture him just like having a sedimentary rock and he puts it on his table and he's like, "You're a liar! You are a liar and a cheat like that geode over there, okay? You can't exist!
He just
You are
he
wrong!
He's
You are
just
wrong, okay?"
He's just sending rocks to fucking gay conversion camps. You are not millions of years old. You are 1,000. Like, and then they shock the rock or the whatever horrible thing they do at the conversion camps.
Age conversion camps for rocks.
Yeah. So basically, he was like, "I want to get some of these rocks," and they were like, "Nah." And then he's like, "I'm going to sue you." So ultimately, what happened was the Grand Canyon just gives in because he's suing them, and I guess just give him his rocks. But the problem is, they evaluate because the thing is, everybody can't go into these historic sites and just start taking rocks because, like, I don't know, people don't seem to realize this, but people destroy stuff. Like, so
Yeah.
if you just go, "Hey, anybody who wants a rock can come on and get them one in here now," they'd fuck up the whole park, right?
Yeah.
So what they do when you ask for this is they evaluate what you're doing for. Does it have any scientific merit? And also, can you get the rocks from a less protected place? Now, they determined that he could get the rocks from a less protected place. He didn't need it. He didn't need it there. He argued that it's religious discrimination. My ethical thing is now, if you're science and you want to keep an open mind, how do you shut somebody down that's trying to make a religious-based point that has no scientific merit while not censoring people's, desires to, like, do stuff like that? Does that make sense?
No, they're Nazis.
Yeah. But I think it's like, because your religion has
Was that
no
the right
scientific...
timing for that?
Huh?
Was that the right timing for
I
that?
think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so the Park Service gave in, and yeah, good, because the way it goes, they'd probably lose anyway, and it would probably set a dangerous precedent. Um,
Yeah.
they said they don't admit any fault, but they said get your rocks, whatever. Um, but
Yeah,
it
it was
says
just a
here's
case of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's like, you know what? If you're going to bitch about it, just fucking
so
take it in
here's the
tow.
thing. It says his original research application did not mention his young Earth creationist beliefs, nor did it disclose his job as a director of research at Answers in Genesis, the Ken Ham-led organization that runs the Creation Museum in Kentucky. But his religious beliefs did come up when the park sent his research application out to a mainstream geologist for peer review. One reviewer criticized the scientific validity of his application and the avowed creationist agenda of young Earth creationists. The reviewer acknowledged in an email to a park official, these types of proposals, in these types of proposals, you have a hard job. And they do. They have a hard job because they have to, like, that's the whole thing about religious discrimination is just like, maybe it is, but your religion has no scientific validity. And
Darn.
you just want to take, like, that would be like if I was like, hey, I want to take some rocks. Why? Because I want to prove that my dick is just as hard. That has no scientific validity. And, like, if I'm like, but it's my religion, the religion of hard dicks. Like,
That's the reason why I always like the flying spaghetti
Yeah.
monster argument, because the guy's trying to say, well, if it's okay to dress this way because of your religion, why can't I dress like a pirate because the spaghetti monster likes pirates?
yeah.
I don't know if you know this, Pete, but in the country that has the most pirates, they also have the least amount of global warming. Because global warming is the flying spaghetti monster saying that he approves of pirates and doesn't like anything else. Somalia has the lowest CO2 emissions on Earth.
Well, the ethical dilemma, I think, comes from the same idea allowing certain types of where do you draw the line for free speech? Where do you draw the line for people like this, right? And I think the line is when your speech directly harms or attempts to bring harm to someone else.
Yeah.
The scientific validity is of will this bring any value and any will this bring any value to the scientific community? No, then go fuck yourself. I don't care what religion you are. There's no science to back up your young Earth stuff. I've been in a rock class for a week, and I'm like,
There's a whole lot of human opinion in law too, because a lot of the legal system says, beyond a reasonable doubt, would
Yeah.
any reasonable person agree with this, etc.
yeah, exactly. I think so beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. So that's the ethic thing. It's like, what do they do? Like, because maybe giving them the rocks will make them go, hey, holy shit, my whole religion's wrong, and rocks are billions of years old.
Probably not.
I will say this. One of the astrophysicists that gave a talk, I enjoyed. So people send her questions all the time, and she answers them up to a point. But when people send her requests to use the software and ask her questions about how do you know the world's round and prove it, she goes, I'm not going to answer that, and you don't deserve technology, and then doesn't answer any more questions. And I think, yeah. Like if you're gonna be a bad faith scientist, you don't deserve technology.
By speaking of, no, they're Nazis. Are you ready for the That's Cute news of the week?
Yes, yes, yes. And I feel like that's cute news should be wearing a swastika. Like just every time it's something cute, it's always like something about Nazis or white supremacists.
This week in That's Cute news, the Nazi march on Washington, D.C. finally happened.
Oh yeah, that didn't go well. There were like 5 Nazis, but then there were like 5,000 like anti-Nazis.
Yeah, so we covered the fact that Nazis were going to march on the streets of the Capitol a long while back. In fact, I had a whole speech about it. But that day finally came, and it was kind of a nothing story.
Well,
They showed up very early in very small numbers, around 24, and then left so early that they were actually gone by the time they were scheduled to start.
Well, the other thing was too, the police gave them a special train and a special escort to their Nazi rally, and I'm like, why are I understand the cops have a job, but why are the cops coddling Nazis?
I don't know.
If you're going to be a Nazi,
I get the idea behind it that we're supposed. They're most likely. It's possible that they might get attacked, is what they're thinking. But also historically, in Charlottesville, it was the Nazis attacking other people.
Yeah. So my whole point is, if you're going to be a Nazi, at the very least, have the bravado to get there yourself. You fucking weakling. You're like, I think we should exterminate everybody who's inferior. Oh, please protect me, police. Yeah.
Yep.
Like. Fuck 'em, man.
Would you like to hear an updates on Trump's military parade
Oh,
or a chilling day in
that's my
history?
favorite. Oh, I love it. So his super expensive military parade that could feed every veteran for like a year got pushed back. So then he canceled it and said, "I'm going to France." Like that was so like why does one have to do with the other?
It's just funny because he the parade that could have fed every veteran for a year, he was going to hold it on Veterans Day, having our because I mean, what else did our army fight for if not for the president to have the freedom to establish his absolute totalitarian dominance with tanks rolling in the streets?
Also, why do you
But
get to see a full
oh,
military
but
review if you never even joined the military?
that's that too. Now, we don't care that he dodged the draft 5 times. What we care about is that he dodged the draft, and then he pissed on people who did
Yeah,
actually go
well,
to
yeah, so
war.
he's internet brave. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
like that guy I got into an argument with over something like a year ago. That's just like, yeah, I tell you what, you be careful who you talking to. I will mop the floor with you. And I'm like, you're gonna make threats over the internet? And I was so mad at this dude. I was like, tell you what. And I didn't do this, but it's like because the angriest I've ever been where someone physically threatened me over the internet. I was gonna send him my address and tell him when I would be there and say I'll be the guy outside with the shovel. And when he goes, why? I was gonna go. So when I'm done beating you to death with it, I can go ahead and dig your fucking grave. And then I went, oh man, this is how you get arrested, isn't it?
Partially, but also as soon as you give him your information, he can dox you.
Yeah, but whatever, man. Like I'm not my identity is
But
not that secret. But the point
it
is,
is funny though. But the White House's official stance is that it was not canceled, but rather delayed until quote late 2019, which is honestly, if Trump's still in the White House unimpeached by late 2019, the message is kind of clear that he is the U.S.'s first dictator.
maybe I don't want to believe that yet. But maybe.
Well, but then that brings us to our next point, which is a chilling day in history.
All right, what's the chilling day in history? Is this a new segment you're doing?
No, it's just a chilling day in history. I hope it's not a reoccurring segment.
I
Oh
swear to
God, that would
God, if
suck.
this is one of your weird dad jokes where you go, a chilling day in history. Did you know that on this date in 1901 in Outer Mongolia, the temperature tipped down to a very, very cold 13 degrees Fahrenheit on this, a chilling day in history?
Womp womp.
'Cause that sounds like some bullshit that you would do.
Maybe. But for the first time in American history, a U.S. president has used the power of his office to punish a member of the intelligence community who has criticized him. Former CIA Director John Brennan.
Oh, well, let me tell you a little story about CIA directors and presidents. There's a very strong possibility that they may have presidents assassinated. We can't prove it because we blamed it on Lee Harvey Oswald, but I'm just saying, be real careful about who you piss off in the intelligence community because they'll kill you and make it look like an accident.
Yeah, they did officially rebuke his attack on John Brennan, which I almost made that my That's Cute news for the week because it's like, oh, that's funny. He has no shame, though, so you can rebuke him all you want
Yeah.
and, like, formally send him a stern letter or whatever. He doesn't care. He
Well,
doesn't have humility.
you know, at first I was like, why is this a big deal? Why do like people that are former whatevers, why do they have security clearance anyway?
Oh, that's a very big deal, but go ahead.
Well, what I found out, this is really cool. It's so that they can keep intelligence continuity. So the idea is that intelligence stuff is a constant, long, winding tapeworm through the digestive
Yeah.
system of the United States. And
Yeah,
so the idea is you
we
don't.
need him. We need all the old people. We'll still need Comey in the future.
Yeah.
Because they were around. They saw shit. They know things.
So they know, yeah, they've known and seen so many things that they're
He's
very
not-
good to explain policy. They're kind of like a bunch of time capsules that we know exactly where they're at, and so we can go back and go,
Yeah.
hey, why did we fight the Cold War? And they're like, well, we were as scared of the Russians as they were of us, but nothing was really going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, Trump's making America profoundly less safe by locking up in a vault a hell of a lot of information that we have.
Well, remember, it
Like,
only
this guy
works.
can't.
He doesn't care about that, and it only works to his benefit for us to be less safe because he can capitalize. Because remember,
Yeah,
his
if America's attacked by terrorists, the Republicans win because look at George Bush. His approval ratings went up to 90 in the 90s. What was it, 91%?
something like that.
When
It was
9/11 happened,
very, very
and
high.
freaking Giuliani, this lunatic, he became America's mayor because he was there when it happened. Like, Republicans discovered that when Americans are scared shitless and a lot of terrorists have just killed Americans, they gain a lot of power and they gain a lot of love.
Well,
So
because they're
it
based
definitely
all of
benefits the Republicans to see another terrorist attack
and
happen.
that's the thing is everything that they're based all of their the bedrock of all their policies are fear of the other, fear of the Mexican, fear of African Americans, fear of liberal brainwashing, fear of science. So it's fear based, and
Fear of gender neutral bathrooms.
fear of trans people, yeah. But strangely enough, not fear of people in their own party who are actively sexually assaulting children, of course, which has happened many times. They're not worried about what was that guy from Alabama?
Roy Moore.
Yeah, they're not worried about Roy Moore sharing a bathroom with your daughter, but I'll be goddamn if a trans person is in there. Like, dude, but anyway. But I digress.
Roy Moore can fuck your daughter even if she's 14, but a transgender person, ooh, they ain't sharing the bathroom with my children. But you can marry him and fuck him if you want.
Yeah, so it's a whole thing. But yeah, so yeah, that basically leads us to the end of this episode. Was there anything that our super fan, the Baron, wanted us to talk about before we sign off?
Nothing that we are going to talk about.
So we do have a super fan who has who instant messages us constantly, and what's really great is we love all of our fans, all 5 of you. But this particular super fan will tell us to talk about stuff that we've already talked about extensively, and it's kind of cute. And he's like, "Oh, did you hear about these new executive orders? The president can just do stuff," and we're like. Yeah. We actually talked about how Obama's expansion of the executive branch through executive orders allowed Trump to do what he's doing. Oh, have you talked about this guy, Jeff Sessions, yet? He's a real racist.
Yeah,
Like,
we're aware, Wesley. He's I have an entire screenplay dedicated to Jeff Sessions. Actually, if anyone would like it, I'll email it to you. Just request those muckrakers at gmail.com, and I will send you that. It's really funny. It's about Keebler elves and squirrels.
But anyway, yeah, that's going to be it for this week. Remember to go on and rate us, or don't rate us. I don't know. Is anybody rating us anymore? Didn't one person go on and give us a rating?
I heard that one person went on and gave us a rating on something, but I was only checking like iTunes, and I checked YouTube subs. I don't know. I didn't see any ratings. If anyone out there has rated us, I'll look into everything else we have. I'll make Peter do it, something like that.
You know, it really does
We'll figure it out, and we'll give you a shout out.
It does feel like podcasting of the apocalypse, where we're like, if anybody's out there, get to safety. We'll broadcast every Friday at 7 o'clock. Keep your radios tuned to this channel.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is anybody there?
I really do hope they let us
Clarence?
I really hope they keep letting us do this in Guantanamo.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. Do you
turn
think
in-
they'd let us be cellmates, or would it be like, no?
I don't know. I'll denounce everybody I know as long as they let me keep podcasting.
It'll just be like me podcasting alone by myself with like my Wesley voice.
Yeah, I guess the other alternative is just
the Baron voice. We weren't giving his name away.
yeah, we already gave his name away. You should bleep it in the recording.
I could, but that would like take me some extra time, and it's super late now.
Yeah.
So sorry, Wesley. They just know who you are now.
All right, guys.
Oh,
As always, we don't have a sign off, but we'll find one day. As always, I'm Peter,
And I'm Pat.
and yeah, that's just the Muckrakers. Because I knew it, I got real quiet, and I'm like, why can't I hear him pee anymore?